Yo, what's going on everyone? It's Brian and Jim here with Drink a Beer and Play a Game. Today, we wanted to bring you a little insight on this into the world of Shadowrun. Since we're going over the majority of the games, unfortunately we're not going over the Sega CD game, but for all the other 4 games, this is a huge world, and to save us some time on those videos, we just wanted to give you a brief history. Since Jim is the bigger nerd for this, I'll let him start and explain just the general concept.
Alright, I'll try to hit some major bullet points here. So basically, the universe is kind of set in the 2050s. Oh, I guess before I start, all this is based on a pen and paper RPG kind of game that came out originally in 1989, I want to say. And it was hugely popular, and it's still pretty popular today. It's had card games and miniature games and all kinds of crap. And video games. So, basically, like I said, the world is set in the 2050s. Most of the games we played were based in Seattle, but other ones are based in Brazil and Hong Kong and blah 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 blah. So, it's kind of a worldly thing. Alright, here's where the dorky stuff comes in. So, there's an event known as the Awakening, and basically what happened is magic came back to the world. So, people randomly started morphing into dwelves and orcs and,
What's dwelves?
Damn it. Alright, into orcs, elves, dwarves, dragons came back to the world and they took human form. Mega corporations basically run the country now. But, in a weird way, dragons in their human form tend to be the heads of these major corporations. Besides that, there's this big criminal underworld where the Shadowrunners come in, because these are guys that are hired by people known as fixers, and fixers basically work for quote-unquote Mr. Gundersons, who are reps from each of the corporations or the mobs, and they do these underhanded jobs. So it's either corporate espionage or hacking into places, or, courier missions, escorting people, all different kinds of crap. So long story short, you're the guys at the bottom who are doing all the dirty work for the corporations and all the people in power.
So Jim, would a good roundup of all that being basically, it's like Terminator mixed with Game of Thrones?
What?
Magic, cyber stuff. Oh, and The Matrix.
Yeah, I should probably mention that. So basically, there's a big hacking element to this world, and that involves The Matrix. So, kind of ahead of its time, this whole tabletop world developed a interconnected cyberspace kind of world where hackers would go in and they would work with other hackers, and all the corporations had their own hackers. You have your own little avatar inside the world where you go and fight against all these different protocols to try to keep you out.
It's like a game within a game.
Yeah, it basically is. So it's kind of the internet before the internet, and it's called The Matrix before the Matrix.
Alright, and then the only other thing I'll touch on, in every game, and in some cases in the games you can actually choose which type of character you want to be, but the major classes break down to a mage, a street samurai, a decker, a shaman, and a rigger. Now, the only ones I'll say you probably wouldn't recognize, the deckers are basically the computer geeks. They're the ones that hack into the Matrix and they can do the most. Shaman and mages, they're kind of the same, where shamans just focus more on summoning things. Your street samurais, they're the typical using weapons to get shit done. And riggers, they basically use like drones, technology, cybernetic limbs, shit like that. And actually going through the list, the only other one I saw was physical adepts. They're the best way I can describe them, think of like a typical martial artist who happens to use combat spells to enhance themselves. So you get a nice little mixture of all of them, and in some of the games you do get to choose, as I mentioned, especially the later games, but I just wanted to touch on that so when you hear us using some of this terminology in the videos, you'll understand. So be aware, we will be referencing back to this video many times. This is a huge world, and if you really are even slightly interested, go over to their wiki page and you can spend hours and hours just learning about all this shit. But other than that, stay tuned, because now we're going to actually start getting into the game reviews.
It's a cyberpunk fantasy! Ow!
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.